Most people don't know what's holding them back, but you do because you listen to me, Sam, your self-care guru and journal junkie. Welcome to Journal Entries, your safe place where you can tune in weekly to get tips, tricks, and journal prompts to uncover your feelings, gain clarity, and make your move. Hello, welcome to this week's journal entry. This is going to be a juicy and potentially emotional episode, but before we get into the thick of it, I wanted to share a really big success with you that I honestly wasn't even aware of, and then I just kept forgetting to mention it. When I first started this podcast, I didn't do it for the views or the ratings or anything. I truly just felt like pulled from my heart to share the struggles that I've been through in hopes that it inspires another woman out there that's in the thick of it and in the trenches and looking for that inspiration and hope and tips on how to get out of it and how to process the hard stuff. So that's really what I've been focused on. However, we just hit over 10,000 downloads. I upload this podcast through Kajabi, and the numbers that they share with me are actually a little bit lower than what the actual number is across, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. But anyways, we're at 10,770 downloads at least, which is a huge success, I believe. So thank you for all of the downloads, for listening. If you feel compelled to rate this episode or my show, I always do appreciate that, because when you do, it inspires more people to listen, which therefore means I'm able to help more people. So if you want to do that, feel free. If not, totally fine. Either way, we're going to get into the juicy stuff now. This episode is all about 4 years ago. Facebook, for some reason, is continuously updating me on what has happened 4 years ago, Facebook memories. This week, it's just constant pictures of what my life was like 4 years ago. And maybe I was just posting a lot at this time 4 years ago. And it is bringing me back, obviously, to where I was at in my life. If you have not been with me for that long, 4 years ago, I was 7 months pregnant. I was at the time living in Maine, but literally, I think today, at the time I'm recording this, it's June 25th. And I think it was June 25th that I started the move down to North Carolina, from Maine to North Carolina, with my now ex-husband, because I could work from anywhere, and he was going to a boat building school in Maine, but he got a job down in North Carolina. So my twin came with us, and we did like a week-long trip. We stayed a few extra days in, where was it? Ocean City, Maryland. And then we stayed a few extra days in Nags Head, in the Outer Banks is where we moved. And then we actually lived in Manteo, North Carolina. So anyways, I was pregnant. We ended up moving. I ended up having the baby. We then ended up moving back up to my hometown, which is in Western New York. I ended up going through a divorce. I started 2 businesses. What else? There's probably more things in there. Those are just like the tippy top highlights of all that has gone down in the 4 years. So much has happened. One highlight that I thought of, it's a subliminal highlight. And I only noticed this when I was reflecting back on the things that have happened. And it was when we decided to move from Maine to North Carolina. I was going back and forth for weeks on what I wanted to do, like what my perspective was of if I wanted to stay in Maine or move down to North Carolina. And I was making pros and cons lists and really trying to convince myself, like maybe North Carolina could be fun and I don't know, like a fresh start, and there could be cute shops we could walk to, trying to convince myself that I didn't want to stay in Maine. But my heart wanted to stay in Maine. And my ex-husband asked me what I wanted to do. And I finally gained the courage to use my voice and tell him, I want to stay in Maine. I do not want to move down to North Carolina. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but I remember feeling like his response was, okay, we're moving down there. And I remember crying. And at the time, I was not a crier. Now I am, but I never cried. And I realized looking back that it was one of the first times that I heard my voice and used it, and almost immediately it went unheard. It was like, great, but we're not doing that. Like it wasn't even put into consideration, which then I think that I like subconsciously maybe learned like, okay, well, I tried and it didn't get me anywhere, so I might as well not speak up even more. It's just kind of like another lesson, not a good lesson, but another lesson I learned from that relationship to stay quiet, to not use my voice. So, anyways, that was an interesting little takeaway that I had. I was talking to my twin sister about all of this, all that has went down in the past 4 years. And she was saying that within 4 years, literally 4 years ago, in June of 2020, she started dating her now husband. And then she moved in with him. She actually moved in with him when I moved home. I kicked her out of this apartment and she moved in with her boyfriend. And then they got engaged, got married, they bought a house, they have a baby. So much has happened. So I would love for you to reflect on what has happened in your life in the past 4 years. And I would love for you to share it with me. I truly think that so much happens. And when we don't stop to reflect, on the good and the bad, it's just so easy to think that we're just staying stagnant when in reality we have had so much growth through the good and the bad. All of this got me to think about not just the big moments over the past 4 years, but also what have been my biggest emotions that I have worked through over the past 4 years. This is really interesting. This is the juicy stuff that I want to share with you. I came up with 4 emotions that were the most powerful. When I say big emotions, I got that term or phrase from my therapist. She said that it's like it feels big when it's an emotion that just feels heavy. And sometimes it feels like you just want to push it under the rug, or you don't know how to even talk about it. You don't know how to process it. And a lot of these things is what I brought to my therapist and what so many of my journal entries were filled with. So the first one was grief. This was the first real chunk of my journal entries was grief. And it was about my divorce. I still remember the feeling of like it felt like my heart physically hurt. But it was this crazy experience because for the pain that I was feeling, at the same time, I knew that it was the right decision and I wouldn't have taken it back. And I had so much hope for the future and I was excited to see what would come, but it was still a loss. Divorce is a loss of the partner that you had, the best friend that they were for however long you guys were together. Me and my partner were together for 12 years between dating and marriage. Also, the grief of the life that I thought that I would have. This was something that I worked with my therapist on for a little while. I remember going to therapy, and for a while, I would just cry about how I envisioned Griffin's first birthday to go, specifically, like the feeling of just a supportive spouse being there and like the two of us throwing this birthday party together and just like happy vibes, right? And instead, I spent Griffin's first birthday throwing the party by myself with a lot of help from my parents. My ex did come. He drove up or flew up from Florida since he moved away. And his parents came and it was just awkward tension. And it was just, it was just a mess. I cried my eyes out to my mom before everybody came over. This would come up every now and then. And my therapist said, Sam, I hate to break it to you, but I think what you have to do is go back to all of the moments like the first birthday and revisit them. And then I asked her, and then what? Like, what happens once I am aware of all of these times? And I don't remember what she said, but something else that she said, not necessarily in the same conversation, but I remember her telling me that like he just wasn't my person and that I will have those experiences, but with somebody else. And so I kind of blended the two together. And in my journal entries, I revisited these painful times. And then I wrote about how that just wasn't meant to be for me and how I am excited for to experience another birthday that will be how I want it to be, or another celebration that will be exactly how I want, and how those times will come. It never would have happened with the person that I was with. Like I couldn't have done anything different. And if anything, I felt like better now than later. Like it was going to happen eventually. Like it just wasn't the person for me. It wasn't the situation. So that if you feel like you're going through grief in any sort of situation that might be similar, that might help you. Another grief moment was Sailor moving away. During the divorce, my ex asked for our dog, Sailor, and I kept the cat, Leopold, which I was fine with because Sailor wasn't very friendly towards Griffin, who was 9 months old at the time. And so I was like, you know what? It'll be easier on me. But it was really hard to let the Sailor leave. So that was, I don't want to say unexpected grief, um, but it was just a lot harder than I expected. So the second emotion that I continue to feel is emotional exhaustion and frustration. I feel this in a lot of different ways, mostly with parenting, especially as a solo parent full time. I can't tell you how many journal entries I started saying yesterday was hard because I often journal first thing in the morning. And so reflecting on the day before, I try and just release, from the day before or any big conversations, anything that's weighing on me. And so many entries start with yesterday was hard. And then I would just go into what was hard about it. And then it would feel easy because I was able to release it. But it was just emotional exhaustion. I try and do conscious parenting, which is more so like gentle parenting. And as a very empathetic person, holding space for somebody's emotions is what I naturally do. But holding space for huge emotions that are not always logical to adults of a 3.5-year-old toddler who's melting down is so draining. So, and this has been the whole time. So a 9-month-old baby who just keeps crying and the whole 9 yards. So Griffin has never really been an easy baby. I will say he is the sweetest and kindest and definitely has so many moments of being so sweet. He's always been so gentle, but he also is a very sensitive person. So with that comes a lot of meltdowns and a lot of me holding space for him to have those feelings, which is emotionally exhausting. Also, just being very candid and open with you, it is emotionally exhausting and frustrating the amount of blame that I was carrying towards my ex for putting me in this situation. What I mean by that is anytime it got super difficult with Griffin, I found myself defaulting to blaming my ex for moving away simply because I never have a break and just kind of feeling jealous that he gets to live life and literally do whatever he wants whenever he wants. And I would never change having Griffin full time. I love it. But at the same time, I can feel that and miss having moments to myself and miss having moments of peace in my day and miss, potentially having somebody else deal with a meltdown as I take a shower or water my plants or like do something. So I was carrying a lot of that. So through a lot of journal entries, I was able to release that. And I even still have a notes app in my phone that my friend helped me with And I have some key phrases. So if my mindset ever goes back to that, I can pretty quickly snap out of it based on like some affirmations and things that I just want to remind myself of. The third emotion going on an upswing is joy. Joy is something that I felt so much of the past 4 years. All of Griffin's morning hugs. Morning is my favorite time with him. Sometimes I would go into his room when he woke up, and once he started, like, when babies start hugging you and like using their arms, from that moment, he just gives the best hugs. And as a mom, it's like the best feeling. And he still does that. There have been mornings where he would come find me and just come into whatever room I'm in and give me the best hugs. It's like one of my favorite things. I'm smiling as I'm just talking about this. So that has given me so much joy. And anytime I think of it, it gives me joy. Also witnessing any milestone of his, like just being here and being a part of every single milestone that he has. Also, a lot of joy with the opportunities that I have had in my network marketing business. I was asked to speak on their weekly call to the entire organization, which was a huge opportunity. And then last summer, I was recognized on stage for earning $1 million cumulatively in my business and helping at least 3 people a month for 100 consecutive months. So that just felt really cool to be recognized for that. Also, a lot of joy for helping other women who were struggling in their relationships. Before I even started journal coaching, but it definitely helped me start this business. I was helping women, and a few of these women were in really toxic marriages, and they decided to leave. I was helping a few women who had spouses that left them, and they were left high and dry with kids, and I was able to support them. And then I helped a few women that were inspired to communicate more and to work through it with their spouses, and they're happy right now. So I have a lot of joy just from helping those women. I have a lot of joy from putting myself first and going on those solo Airbnb trips when Griffin is with his dad, and really just asking myself, like, what is it that I want? How can I feel happy today? In fact, inside my digital journal that is free, and I'll link it in the show notes, one of the questions is, what would make me happy today? And the thing that I put today was, I would feel happy by watering my plants, because I don't do that every day. Don't tell my mom. She's listening right now. But then I was like, not just watering my plants, watering them slowly, like not doing it in a rush. So something so simple, but like I'm looking forward to doing that later. So, anyways, a lot of joy with that, and a lot of joy and excitement about the growth in my journaling business. I just feel like there's so many opportunities coming, so many opportunities that I'm thinking of. There was a time back in April where a lot of people started finding me through my podcast and even my YouTube channel, and they're utilizing my journaling resources. And it's just really exciting to me to know that people are finding me useful and utilizing the resources that I put together, and that they are helping their lives in even a tiny way. The last big emotion, and I think it might just feel big because it's the biggest one right now, is curiosity. I feel right now so curious about my life, in the sense of, how can I live my life more authentically, more true to me, so that it flows better. And I feel this in a few different ways. Parenting, for example. How do I want to parent? How do I want to discipline? What routines are important in me to instill? Where do I not care as a parent? What am I willing to just, totally fine, you do you, Griffin? I'm just really curious about that. And I've been researching a lot on like different ways to go about things and all of that. Another thing that I'm curious about is human design and living by my design. The most interesting thing happened over the weekend. Part of your human design is you have gifts. One of my gifts, in fact, is my second gift, which I believe means it's like one of my top gifts, is living to the beat of my own rhythm, something like that. When I read that, I was like, what? Never have I thought of myself by living to the beat of my own drum, by doing things differently. Never. I always felt so structured. I felt like working like a 9 to 5. And even when I wasn't working a 9 to 5, like I've been working for myself for many years, I tried to work during the hours of 9 to 5 or 9 to 4. And I've been trying to stay super structured. However, if I'm being honest with myself, for the past at least 3 years, probably 4 to 5 years, I have felt like I've been trying to keep myself in a box that isn't made for me. And I don't know how to get out of it. I don't know what box to go into. I don't know. It's just felt misaligned. And I'm just so curious on what is the best way for me. And it feels a little challenging and frustrating, but also really exciting to think of, okay, well, if I don't have to work 9 to 5, especially since I am my own boss, what could that look like? And just kind of redefining how I want to live my life so that it flows better, so that it feels better, so that I can be a present mom. The first two huge emotions from the past 4 years weren't necessarily quote unquote positive emotions, but all of the emotions that I listed are ones that I've worked through. I work through the curiosity. I work through the joy. I learn through the joy. Oh my gosh, this is reminding me. Has anybody seen Inside Out 2? There is a line, and it's in the very beginning where Joy wants to go down to the memory pool. I think that's what they call it, where the beliefs are, where the beliefs stem from, all these memories. And Sadness wants to go down with her. And without hesitating, Joy says, "Of course you can come down, Sadness. Where I go, you go." And if you don't really think about it, it's just like, oh, that's nice. That's what I thought in the movies. But if you think more into that, whenever you experience joy, there is also sadness. Like if you picture your wedding day, it's so joyous and happy, but also a part of you might be thinking about all of the people who couldn't be there that day. I'm even thinking of like someday Griffin might get married, and that's an amazing thing. But also, I'm losing my son. Not, I don't truly feel that way, but it's like a loss. It's like a sadness of some kind. So that's just one example. I could give a ton of examples on this. I'd share that to share the perspective of how joy is something that you can work through, as well as the emotions like sadness and, emotional exhaustion and frustration and grief. The thing that I love about journaling is that it helps me move through these emotions quicker. I don't stay stuck in them, especially those bigger emotions and harder emotions, for as long as I used to, because I have the tools to do it. So here's how I do it through journaling. Number one, I stay consistent with journaling through these big emotions. That does not mean daily. I journal. Right now, it's probably 4 to 5 days a week. Number two, I stay accountable to honoring my emotions versus stuffing them under the rug. For about 30 years, I stuffed my emotions under the rug. So anytime I have a big emotion, I do feel the temptation to just be positive and ignore it and distract myself. But I now have the accountability, the self accountability, and the group accountability through Emotionally Empowered to honor it and to name it and to work through it. Three, I have this support through Emotionally Empowered mostly, but also one of my close friends. Support is so key for the times where you want to give up, whether that be just not talking about things and shutting down, or if you're the type of person that does want to talk about things, but then you get stuck there. So having that support system that allows you to talk through things and honor it and helps you move through it. The fourth thing that helps me with moving through these emotions quicker is strategic guidance. And this is what I help people with inside Emotionally Empowered. For myself, I utilize my own tools and resources, but it's simply specific steps to journal through. I feel like if you have a big emotion and you immediately jump to, okay, well, what is it that I do want? You're missing all of the steps beforehand that teach you so much about what it is that you're currently feeling and what it is that you think other people are thinking of you, or what the meanings hold to you, and those limiting beliefs that you have that you truly need to uncover before you can even ask yourself what it is that you want. So I guide you through that and ending with steps to actually get what you want or feel how you want to feel. And lastly, simply having the goal to better understand yourself and live a more full life. And that's where I am now. That is my goal, is to just deeply understand who I am so that I can live a more full life, so that I can use my voice more, no matter how it's received, but also aligning myself with people that will receive my voice and make me feel heard and understood. Right now, I have a summer sale going on with Emotionally Empowered. That is my journaling community. I will share a link so you can get all of the details. But the summer sale is 70% off. Typically, 1 month is $197 a month. But right now, you can get your first month for only $57, and recurring months are locked in at only $97 a month if you choose to continue. $100 off. Insanity. I don't know. I know why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I want journaling and this strategic way to journal to be accessible and for you to just experience it, because when you do, you won't want to turn back and you will want to make this a habit, and you're going to feel so much better. Take a look at the links in the show notes if you want to be a part of anything that I've mentioned. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Feel free to rate my show, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's journal entry. I love connecting with my listeners, so make sure you screenshot this episode and tag me on Instagram at samantha.s.says so I know you're listening. And don't forget to grab your free training and journal prompts at www.samanthapenkoff.com/podcast.